Walking back through the narrow and brief alley after visiting a little coffee shop in my hometown, I saw him standing quietly in the parking lot. He was probably 6'3", and his tattered jeans and wrinkled blue Oxford shirt seemed to hang a bit awkwardly on his thin frame. From the shaggy gray beard, I surmised he was likely in his late 60s. I also surmised he was about to ask me for cash, which I conveniently just spent the last dive on my coffee. Sure enough, as I smiled and nodded hello, he slowly asked, "Excuse me, buddy, would you buy an old veteran a cup of coffee?" Well, I thought that was a bit of a twist on the standard request for money, but nevertheless, I shared with him my "I'm out of cash" story. He smiled in a surprisingly understanding way and added, "No problem. I've just been waiting on my check from the VA. They're slow, to say the least," he grinned. Something was different about this seemingly homeless man, and it wasn't the fact that he was carrying a small briefcase, although that added to the odd scenario. Then suddenly, visions of the lessons I'd shared with my daughters when they were younger began popping into my mind. Lessons on giving. You never know what someone's life has been like, I would extol them. Yes, it was time to practice what I had preached. I bet that coffee shop takes credit cards. Come on, let's go grab a cup, I suggested. Well, he grinned again. We walked back through the alley and ended up at a little coffee shop. As we strolled in together, I could feel what seemed like every head turn and stare at this unlikely pair. We approached the counter, and as I said to the mid-20ish barista, "This gentleman is a veteran, and I'd like to buy him a cup of coffee," she didn't miss a beat. "My father's a veteran also," she beamed. "Thank you for your service." He didn't minimize or take the compliment for granted. Instead, he looked her squarely in the eyes and softly said, "You're welcome, ma'am." I was beginning to feel a great compassion for this veteran, and I wondered if he was hungry. "Pick out whatever you'd like. Lunch is on me," I said, fully expecting him to place a hearty order. "No, thank you. Coffee's just fine," he replied without hesitation. I was surprised, to say the least. We stepped outside and sat at a little table and began sipping our coffee and talking. I asked him what war he was in, and he said Vietnam. Not really knowing what to say, I paused and then added, "I guess I can't imagine what it was like over there." He seemed to withdraw a bit, as if he'd heard that many times before, and he firmly replied, "Yeah, neither could I. I was 19, but I learned quickly." As the soft spring breeze blew across the patio, it seemed to usher in old memories to him. "I did some things over there that I'm not proud of, but I guess they had to be done," he said. "In fact, either way, they're done now." There was a tone of sadness in his voice, and it seemed to trail off as his blue eyes grew misty. "Both my grandfathers died at the Battle of Normandy, and I remember most of the time in Vietnam I believed I would be the next one to go," he quietly said. The depth of his pain and sadness suddenly became acutely apparent. We talked a bit more and realized we had quite a few acquaintances and friends in common from our small Georgia hometowns. I couldn't help but think that this could have just as easily been me had the hand of fate deemed it. The spring air suddenly felt colder. An hour passed like minutes, and it was time for me to go on my way. We shook hands. He thanked me for the coffee, and I thanked him for what he'd done for our country. And I left. As I reached the corner of the building and turned to walk back to the alley towards my car, I glanced back and saw him opening that small, mysterious briefcase. In it was the sole content which he removed with great care: a beautiful, old, and very well worn Bible that he carefully opened and began reading with a soft smile. I too smiled and continued to my car, feeling an empathy and connection with this man which I still can't describe today. The next veteran you meet, whether they appear homeless or wealthy or somewhere in between, thank them for their service. Maybe even buy them a cup of coffee. They may be fighting or refighting battles you'll never understand. For me, I was left feeling grateful. Grateful for a chance conversation with a vet that I'll never, ever forget.